And I told her, I'm like, it's okay if you don't want to be strong right now. Like, let yourself fall apart. Like, let the people around you hold you for a little bit. Like, it's okay to not feel like you have to have it all together right now. Hey, JoBeth, thanks for coming on. I am so excited to be able to chat with you today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So I know you and I chit-chatted a little bit ahead of time and kind of talked about like what we're going to talk about today. And I know we're going to dive into so much, but for those that don't know you already, tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? What brought you here? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so my name is JoBeth Polly. I just recently got remarried, so that's still kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
But I recently got remarried after being widowed, and I live in Northwest Arkansas. So I'm currently doing grief work with people where I take women from like the depths of their grief and bring them to a place of light and hope. But what brought me there was a couple experiences. The first being I went through infertility in my early 20s, which was totally devastating. And then about 5-6 years later, my husband got diagnosed with a terminal brain cancer. And so that just sent me headfirst into grief, all the different kinds of grief, the grief that goes with losing something that you're never going to get to have with somebody in the future, and the diagnosis and dealing with him while he was living, and us both grieving this life together. That's what led me here. I needed a lot of help when I was grieving, and I got it. I sought it out and I found it and used it. And today I'm just that person for other people. I think that when there's resources available, use them to get to where you want to be. And I'm so excited to get to be that person for other people.
Yeah. And I don't know if you and I talked about this, but my husband had been diagnosed with a brain tumor as well.
No, you did not mention that.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's doing fine now. His was benign and whatnot, but it's still scary. Like that whole process of, like you said, getting a diagnosis, not knowing what the diagnosis means initially, and then navigating through it and all of the process. I'm sure some of our stories are different or the same, and some of it are very different. If you went back to that person that you were then, what would you wish that she knew?
Like before the diagnosis?
Yeah.
I don't think I would have wanted to know anything. Like it was, I had a preconceived idea of what this might look like because I, immediately got in the Facebook groups and immediately started looking, trying to figure out what this was going to look like. And it painted a really dark picture. And I chose to not believe that that was going to be our story.
Yeah.
Just was like, nah, he's going to be the one that makes it. But I don't know. Like I had a mindset early on, like well, my mom hugged me the night of the diagnosis and she said, "You are so strong." And I was like, I'm about to get a whole lot stronger. Like even within an hour and a half of the diagnosis, I knew that I was going to be pushed to my absolute limits over and over again, indefinitely. I didn't know how long he would live or how long I would grieve after, So I don't think I would have wanted to have known anything.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like as we navigate through that, like even just that comment too, I have a friend of mine who just lost her husband, and I went over and I was, I took her food and was just there for her right after. And she's like, "It's okay. I'm really strong. Like, we're going to get through this. Like, we're going to get through this, And I, in that moment was like, but do you have to be strong? Right? Like there's this, and maybe you can talk on this too. Like there's this belief in our culture that anytime we go through something really challenging or difficult or hard, that it's like this, like, I've got to be really strong. Like, or as a society, we're like, man, you did really great. You got through that. You were really strong. Like, how did you do that? Like, you were really strong. And I told her, I'm like, it's okay if you don't want to be strong right now. Like, let yourself fall apart. Like, let the people around you hold you for a little bit. Like, it's okay to not feel like you have to have it all together right now. And for me, like in that moment, that's like I felt like she needed to hear that. I'm like, you can cry, you can scream, you can, whatever you need to do right now, like let yourself process it and don't feel like you have to hold it all together. And I think that's partly like our society has made that seem like this is the thing that you do when you go through hard times, is like you hold it all together.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know now about the body and how we process things is like, that's probably a big part of what's causing illness and all these other things for people, is like not actually processing and feeling those emotions and not feeling into that. But I don't know, like for you, like how, in that sense of like when you felt that feeling of like strong, like I have to be really strong, or like what was your experience going through that, in that sense of like holding it together versus allowing yourself fall apart versus feeling the emotions versus not wanting to feel them, right? Like
Yeah.
I remember when my husband was in surgery, sitting there in the waiting room, and I did not want anybody with me. I remember his like family flew in from out of town, like they wanted to be here, and I was like, I absolutely cannot deal with anybody else at the waiting room. Like
Yeah.
I will lose it. Like I will not be able to hold it together. Like that sense of like, I know I need to be strong right now. And if somebody else is there and I'm feeding off their energy, I will not be able to hold it together. And so I was like, I cannot have anybody else there. So I was like sitting there at the waiting room by myself. And I remember just over and over in my head being like, this is just part of the story. This is just part of my story. This is just part of my story. And that was the only thing that I could hold on to in that moment, right? Or else I would have totally fallen apart. And now looking back, I'm like, I probably should have let myself fall apart a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of curious, like what your experience, or like what you see with women that are in that situation as they navigate through, or like your lived experience around that idea of like holding it and being in it versus allowing ourselves to actually like fall apart.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you were alone during your husband's brain surgery, because I was also alone, but I was alone because of COVID. It was the COVID rules only allowed one person in.
Yeah.
And I was obviously the person. So he was at MD Anderson and was in there for 8 hours, and I was there by myself. And I can relate to that because everybody was like, that's so sad that you were there, which my husband was not going to survive. And everybody knew that the surgery was just going to hopefully prolong his life. And so, like, by a couple months, like, it was not going to be anything like, anyways. But I remember having a similar feeling of being like, I'm in complete control of the emotional state of this environment. Like, and I was just like, I was in prayer. I was centered. I was thinking about him. I was kind of walking around the hospital. I mean, it was like a full day, basically, of waiting. And so I definitely can relate to that, except for I didn't have to tell anybody not to come, because like that's good. But I did feel like a lot of comfort just being there with myself. But as far as the strength part, at least with anything, like we have to have balance in everything that we do. When you are the caretaker for somebody who is dying and you have 2 kids, you can't not get out of bed in the morning. You can't just feel your feelings all day long, because you have responsibilities. And I think in an ideal world, we would be able to, we'd be able to just grieve openly and freely. But like, I'm thinking like, what effect would that have had on my kids if I was just broken and falling apart all the time? Like, it would have been really hard on them. But I also think that a lot of mistakes parents make is they don't grieve in front of their children. So there's like 2 sides of this, right? So there's a side of like, you don't show them anything, and then they wonder why mom can't get out of bed anymore, and it's really scary and confusing. So like, there has to be balance. And I'm not saying that I handled it perfectly. I was just like doing kind of what my therapist was like guiding me to do. And that was to really feel my feelings and to set aside time to do that. So she suggested that I go get in my car and go somewhere and just listen to sad music and like feel all my feelings and cry and like just get mad or whatever. And like, I would do that and I would cry until my face hurt. Like, I would just like get it all out and then be like, okay, girl, you're going back in. Like, it's kind of almost like you see athletes, like they get busted in the face and they put a butterfly thing on it and slap their butt and send them back in the game, like that's kind of how I felt. I was like, okay, you had that release, you reflected, you were sad. Now it's time to go back in and be present with your kids and to be there for them, because as the mom, you got to keep going. So I think there has to be a good balance there. And when you see that there's going to be problems. So if you're just being strong all the time, at some point you're going to crash. And I definitely went through a season of that, the Christmas after he passed, where I was like, I got this. All the Christmas parties, the Christmas here, like Christmas is hard anyways. It was just like all the practices, all the games, like just bam, 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 just hitting everything. And it was like, I've never felt more emotionally drained in my life. Like there was nothing left in me. And so like I experienced the other side of that is like being so strong that you're not allowing time for yourself. And what does that balance look like? Like only what the balance needs to be. But I'm saying if your skin's breaking out, if you're having just strange, bizarre like illnesses come up, like or you're having headaches all the time, or you're coughing all the time, you're having just unexplained illnesses pop up that you're like, why the heck does my toe hurt? which was a real thing that happened to me. And like, why is this happening? I think you can look and be like, okay, I'm out of balance. Like I'm trying to be so strong that I'm neglecting this and it's coming up in my health. So I think that we can really look at like how we feel and tell if we're in balance or not.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of goes back to like how, like I said, like our bodies are perceiving everything and they're taking on things that even maybe consciously we're not paying attention to. And I know you and I talked about before is like the subconscious and like how our subconscious is driving the bus most of the time, if not all the time. Like 95% of our thoughts are not conscious thoughts. They're not ones that we're actively thinking.
Right.
And so even in those moments when we're like, I'm so strong, everything's going fine, like everything's good, we're all right. Like we have this like conscious mental narrative that maybe we think we have like 95% of our brain is unconscious and has maybe a whole different narrative. And that narrative may be the one that's actually driving the bus. So I know that that's something you love talking about too and love talking and like becoming aware of that. So how do you feel like that played out in this story? Like how or where did you kind of discover that? Like how did you kind of come to discover like how much the subconscious was playing out for you?
Well, probably the biggest thing was like a fairly recent thing. My mom was telling me about a guy at the church that I used to go to. His wife had cancer, and they're like, they don't think she's gonna make it. And I immediately got really emotional, like really cry. And I was like, my first thought was, you're always going to be broken. That was my first thought. And I was like, and it didn't feel like my own because JoBeth wouldn't tell herself that, like I would never say that to myself. And I was like, what the heck? Like, what did you just say? Like, you're always going to be broken. And that feeling that I was having felt like brokenness, but it also felt like deep empathy. And there's a difference there. And so I was like, golly, like that's one thing that like I feel like grievers are really buying into is that they're never going to be okay. They're always going to be broken because you see that feels very true and very real. And so like if there's people like, not even if you're grieving, because I mean, I guess we all have and will at some point, but like what are like these truths that we're believing that are absolutely running our life? And a lot of times those sound like you're not good enough, or because our subconscious speaks in stories. And so it says, like, you're never going to be good enough. Because remember, like you tried out for this team when you're in fourth grade and you didn't make it. And then you tried out for a play because you thought maybe you were musical and then you didn't make it that either. Like you're never going to be good enough to do anything. And so it's speaking to us in those stories and they're so believable and so quiet. Like it's not like, like we talk about the conscious brain that's really loud and chattery, like eat the cookie, don't eat the cookie, eat the cookie, don't eat the cookie, or should I go to therapy or should I hire a coach, or should I go to therapy or should I do a support group, or should I read this book or should I just follow this Facebook page? Like it's your brain's all over the place. The subconscious is kind of like, it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to be okay. And as long as we're buying into that and we're letting it run our lives, like we're not going to be okay. Like I do believe that like we got to learn how to talk to ourselves, and that's a daily thing, like being like, I'm going to be okay. You can recognize where you're at. Like, I'm not okay today. I'm not okay right now. In fact, I haven't been okay in months, but I know that someday I'm going to be okay again. And just really thinking about how you're talking to yourself, because you can retrain your subconscious.
Totally. I think too, and I would love to know like what for you, do you feel like really has helped you learn to tap into that? Because I know sometimes it's one of those things like even that, like consciously, we think we know what our quote unquote limiting beliefs are, or those beliefs that are maybe underlying there. I've gone through some exercises and done some things and been like, whoa, I didn't realize that belief was actually like, I didn't believe that that was driving the bus. Like I remember one time I was at a business conference and I was like writing some stuff out and we were doing this exercise around beliefs and things. And there was this belief that came up around like, if I'm incredibly successful, and ultimately like my end all be all goal would be that like my husband doesn't have to go to work. Like he would be my tech support. We were talking about it before, like my podcast audio engineer, like he'd be all the techie things behind my business. Like that would ultimately be my end dream, but he makes good money. And so to be able to retire him and like have him come work with me, it's a big thing for our business. And I remember this belief that came up was this worry around the responsibility being all mine.
Oh.
And that if my business got to that place where he was working for me and then our entire house was reliant on the success of my business, that felt like so much pressure and so
Yeah.
much responsibility on me. And so when I came across that belief, like as I was doing this exercise, I was like, whoa,
Mm.
like that's holding me back in so many ways because that feels so heavy. That belief feels like a lot of pressure and it feels like a lot of weight. And I don't want that. Like I want my business to feel fun. I want it to feel light. I want it to feel empowering. I want it to feel all these things. And so subconsciously that thought was keeping me from actually moving forward in different ways or getting the success I wanted in certain ways. But it wasn't until I was aware of that thought that I could actually sit there and say, okay, well, no, like if I got to that place, there's always second options, right? Like there's always going to be something or some option between me and everybody reliant, my business being all reliant and like our world crashing because I am not able to sustain it or whatever it might be, right? Like that end of the world sort of thought process that our brains go down. So, but I think sometimes we're not aware of those thoughts. Like we don't understand what those subconscious drivers are that maybe are there in the background. And I think one, I don't know that we will ever know all of them. Like, right? Like it's going to be this thing we're constantly learning. And I know for me, that was one of the like ahas that I had this last couple years is like, man, that idea of brokenness, like I've got these beliefs that are holding me back. I've got to dig them and I've got to excavate them because I'm not good enough with these beliefs or like I'm broken and I'm not going to be successful with these beliefs. And so I have to figure out what they are and I have to fix them. Like I have to fix me. Yeah. And it was that realization of like the fixing me was actually the problem and not, like getting to the end belief would be helpful, but it's like the search for that belief was also part of the problem and that broken, like leading me to feel that brokenness. So it was kind of like coming to that recognition of like the beliefs are always going to be there. We're going to always have beliefs that are guiding us underneath. But how do we make peace with them? How do we like hold them? Like one of my mentors kind of was like, we have all these little like, kid versions of us inside of us, but it's not just one, it's like a whole school bus, right? Like we've got all these inner childs that are inside of us, like a preschool of inner children inside of us. And how do we just say like, hey, preschool, like we're coming along, we're all going together. Like we can still have these beliefs and thoughts and keep going after our goals, keep moving forward, keep whatever. We just don't let the school bus drive the bus, if that makes sense.
You're not letting the little kids drive the bus.
Exactly. We're not letting
all
like,
the
Sally,
little
you get to
versions
drive.
of you.
Sally, you get to drive the bus today.
So what did you do? To once you became aware? What were your next steps?
I think for a long time, I felt like I had to do all this hoopla to be able to move past them, like to let go of them. And what I've realized, I think for me in the last couple of years is like learning to accept them, like learning almost like that idea of once they are seen and validated of like for that instance, right? Like, or that for that one of everything relying on me and the responsibility of our entire family feeling like it's on me. And then I feel like this pressure. Once I recognize that, it's like, okay, I can see why you feel that way. And I can understand why that belief is there. And I can understand that it's a strategy to keep me safe. Right. And so it's like, once I kind of became aware of that, it's like, thank you. Like, thank you, little Sally driving the bus right now for trying to keep us safe. Like, I appreciate that. And we're good. We're okay. Yeah. Like we're solid. We don't need to worry about that, So I think it's kind of that, just like letting that belief be seen and be felt and acknowledged and understanding like it can still be there, but it doesn't have to be the thing dictating my decisions. Like I can say like, okay, that fear is there. If I'm operating from that place of fear or if I'm not, what does that look like differently in the decisions? So I think for me, it's just like that honoring and accepting that they're there and that thought is there versus like, how do I get rid of the thought? For me, I like stumbled back into this place of like, it's something I have to fix and that I'm broken and it's not going to work unless I get rid of the thought. And if I have this thought again, then that's something wrong with me versus it just is. And how do I allow the thoughts, because like you said, there's 5,000 bajillion thoughts that come up every single day. How do we become more aware of the thought versus letting the thought just be the driver? I don't know if that made sense, but
Yeah. No, it totally does. So I did RT therapy, which is an
Mm.
extreme.
Yeah.
And if you know me, I go to the extremes on things. Let's I'm like go all in, go hard,
Yeah.
get it done. But RT is amazing. It's hypnosis therapy. And it is I was struggling with things. I felt like I had dealt with the grief of my husband well. Like I had a therapist that literally held my hand through 6 months before he died, 6 months after. So I was like, okay, I feel like I got a pretty good like grasp on this. Why am I so anxious? I have had anxiety since I was, I think, first grade. So in first grade, I started having chest pains, and it would hurt like right underneath my collarbone in my like chest area. And I went home and told my parents I'm having trouble breathing. Like I can't breathe. Like, well, like as adults, we're like, oh well, it's probably not your lungs. I mean, it could be, but and I was like a little thicker, but I was like, I think I still should be able to like breathe. Anyways, they took me to the doctors and were like, her lungs sound fine. Like there doesn't seem to be anything wrong or whatever. And it wasn't until like recently that I was like, that was when my anxiety started in first grade and that pain in my chest. And so when I went through RT, we spoke to it, which was so weird. Like it's so weird to talk to it, but it's kind of like that. Thank you for like trying to protect me because I know that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I'm good now. Like I got this. Like you can go. And we talked to it and it didn't go away. So we talked to it some more and it didn't go away. And then we talked to it again and it disappeared. And I haven't felt it since I did the RT. But it's that talking to that deep, deep subconscious part of your brain. And that was a 2.5-hour appointment.
Yeah.
Where I basically just cried because it was very much of like going back. And I knew I had a problem because there was a lady who was like, it popped up on my TikTok or something and was like, if you could go back and tell 8-year-old you something, what would you say? And I started bawling. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know why that makes me want to cry, but it did. And I cried. And as we were going back through, and I had a good childhood. So it doesn't, if you had a good childhood and you're like, well, there's nothing in my childhood, like you're probably wrong. Like, because that's where everything happens, which makes me really anxious as a parent.
I know.
Like, wow, how much am I screwing my kids up?
Really messed up my kids. I've just gotten to the place where I'm like, acknowledge that they're going to all need therapy, just like every person needs therapy. Like, there's never going to be a perfect childhood. So I just have said, that is my piece. I will do my best. Yesterday, not to interrupt, but yesterday I was at a stoplight and I look over and the car next to me had like a 1 or 2-year-old, like literally standing and walking around the back seat while they were in the car driving. And I was like, okay. And I was like, there's no car seat, no nothing. And this kid's not even buckled. Like the guy in the front seat, he's buckled into the driver's seat. And this like 1 or 2-year-old's like walking around the back seat. So I was like, if I ever feel like I'm doing a horrible job parenting, I at least need to remind myself that I've put my kids in booster seats. I've put my kids in car seats. They're at least buckled in the car. Like I'm winning in some bet. So
it was a really good, good for your self-esteem to see that moment.
Yes. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, not to interrupt.
It is. No, it's fine. But like we all, like that's where all of our thoughts and our ideas and like we're figuring out who we are and what is life and what is family and what am I? And like, and we look at our parents. And the thing is too, is like, well, I had one client and she said her parents fought all the time growing up. And she was like, I think she said something along the lines of, but if you asked my sister, she doesn't remember them ever fighting.
It's so funny to watch
and
that.
So, yeah. And so she's like, I don't even know if I can say that my parents fought all the time because that's just how I perceived it. But her sister who grew up in the same home didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
And so it really doesn't even matter what actually happened. It's all about how you perceived it and then working through that. And so through RT, like I mean, she took me back and there were these moments that come up and she's like, okay, I want you to take little JoBeth by her hand and I want you to say exactly what you need to say for her. Like you're her voice now. And I cried for 2.5 hours. It felt like I had done like some extreme cruel ab workout the next day. because my body was just like almost like seized up, like just pouring out tears. My clothes were wet with tears. It was the most insane experience of my life and so helpful. So from there, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but from there, you get a customized meditation and you listen to that meditation twice a day for 30 days or something around there. I listen to mine every day still months later because it makes me, it feels like a warm bath for my mind because that's 34 years of beliefs. Like I'm going to work on it every day because I don't want to go back there because I feel so free and happy now. I'm like, oh, I wish I could have done it a long time ago, but it's all rooted in those subconscious beliefs. And one of mine was that I'm not good enough.
Yeah. I think
Like,
that's
doesn't matter
a
how
lot
good
of
you are,
people.
it's not going to be enough. That's rough.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've done some different work and like mentors, and it's like that not good enough or not worthy enough are kind of the two beliefs that are kind of the root of almost all of the other beliefs. Like if it was like a string of knots and we were to like untie a knot, untie a knot, untie a knot, untie a knot, like that end knot for almost every single belief or thing is I'm not worthy enough or I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am curious. Like, it sounds like you dove head into this. Like, I'm just going to go all in. And I think, one, when we have some sort of an experience in our life where we like, I want to grow, or I think for me personally, becoming an entrepreneur and a mom, like, those are like, I think the two most refining things that we'll ever do. Those two things combined together propelled me into wanting to self grow and to change those things. But I know other people in my life who, whether it's a trauma or whether it's something, have said, I don't want to go back there. Right? Like, I don't like that experience that you had of feeling the feelings, being in it, going back to it, creating this experience, like creating this healing. There's still maybe even a lot of fear around that. Like, even if consciously we know, like, I'm going to go back, I'm going to create this healing and I'm going to feel more free. I'm going to feel amazing. I'm going to feel wonderful on the other end of it. But I'm not willing or wanting to go through what I need to go through in order to get to that other side. And I know my sister and I've had this conversation. There's certain people in our family and stuff who are refusing to actually do some of the work that they were asking to do together, right? And even together, not wanting to do it. So I'm curious, like, what was it for you that made you be like, I'm just going into this, like, I'm going to do this no matter what it takes? Or was there a process of like a come to Jesus type of moment that where you were like, I have to do this, there's no other option?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and I had somebody ask me the other day, like, is this something that you can like acquire? Is this personality? And it's just my personality to like take things head on.
Yeah.
It's like the worst thing you could say to me is, I bet you can't do that. Like, and I knew like a lot of people, like I live on a cattle farm. We have a 120-acre cattle farm here, and people like after he died would be like, so are you staying at the farm? And I'm like, yes, because there was a lot of people that thought that it would be for sale and be an opportunity. But no, I think it's just like, for me, the way I felt when they said he had 12 to 16 months to live was the grossest, darkest, unexplainable depth of grief that you could possibly have, like, or that I could have. I shouldn't say for anybody, because it would probably be the equivalent of just finding out your husband had died.
Yeah.
Like that same, because like I still had mine, but there was a 12 months of suffering and watching him slowly die that was coming. It wasn't like there was this dread. So you didn't just have this
Surprise.
like, wasn't just, it was yeah, we had the surprise that he was dying, and then the dread of the next 6 months, and then a tiny bit of hope, but also understanding that you have no reason to have hope statistically, and then also dreading him being gone and grieving his death. And so it was like, I knew that I never wanted to be there again, but there was a period of time I had to be there, and I had to be there for a year of just, and I was like, okay, like once he has transitioned and I have the opportunity to change things for me and for my kids, I'm going to do that. And I went all in. That's my personality. I don't see the point of wallowing. I don't think wallowing in your grief honors your loved ones. And I think a lot of people get confused and think that the more they grieve and the longer it takes them to move forward, and hear me on that, move forward, not move on. You don't move on, you don't forget, you don't get over it, but we have to move forward. And what moving forward looks like is getting out of bed in the morning, taking care of the things that are important, because even if they don't feel important today, they are, like your kids. There were days I was just like, I don't even know, like, I didn't have any desire to live. Okay. So let's just go to that point. Like, even though I knew I had these kids that needed me, and that there was a world that needed me to be an example of what was possible after a tragedy, inside I was fantasizing about crossing the center line and hitting a semi head on. That was a very common, because I was on the road a lot, taking the kids places. And I was like, if I did that, this would all be over. And I would not have to face another day of hard, because like, I wasn't, like, months in, I was not making it through a day without crying. Like, that didn't even seem like possible. But we do have a reason to live. Even if you're struggling to find it, there's somebody that's watching you. And they're watching you, and then they're going to face the same thing. And they're either going to watch you and be like, yeah, JoBeth, she really struggled. Like, everybody had to take care of her kids, and the kids ended up living with her parents, and she lost her farm, and she, like, all this, like, I want to be like her. If something was to happen to me, like, that's sad. Or they could look at me and be like, I don't know how she did it, but it's pretty cool. Because I have grieved my husband. I still do. I always will. There will never be a day when I'm like, well, that worked out well. Like, I will always, like, look back on the situation and be like, that sucked worse than anything I could ever imagine. But I also knew from early on, if I was able to figure this out, okay, if there was a way out. And I believed there was, because I had seen other women who were upright and walking after their husbands died. So I had a little proof. If I could figure it out, then I was going to help as many other women as I can. But what I'm finding is, and let's go back to this, the subconscious, is that these women who think, and these people love to comment on my Facebook stuff, but when I say healing is possible, that it's not. It's not possible. Like, people get so offended because they're like, you don't know. You haven't lost a child. You haven't lost a parent. You haven't lost all this stuff. And it's like, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is if you want to heal, you have to first believe it's possible. Like, if you were really overweight and you didn't believe that you could lose weight, why would you start eating kale and getting on the treadmill? You wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not possible. And so, like, that subconscious that's speaking to these people saying, that was too big of a loss. You're never going to be okay. Like, you're always going to grieve. There's not going to be days when you don't cry. Like, I want to be that person that's speaking life into and over these people that are hurting, saying that, like, it will get better, but you got to believe. And you have to want it, because there's days, man, the holidays are hard for, I think, everybody. And I don't know yet at what point they get easier. But I do know that if you want things to be better in the future, you have to do the work to do that. Just like if you were, like, stuck in that mindset of, like, being the breadwinner for my house would be way too stressful. Like, what's that going to do to your business? Well, it's going to halt it. At some point, it's going to start sabotaging it. It's the same way with grief. And if you just are like, oh, well, common belief, if I move forward, then that means that I'm not really all that sad about what happened, or I'm not honoring my loved one. And I just really wish people could see that, like, and that's where we see beautiful things bloom, is when people move forward and they create a scholarship fund. They create, a nonprofit and honor their loved one, because they get to get up every day and honor them in some way. They have found purpose in their pain. And that is, I think, a huge motivator for a lot of people. It's like, okay, well, if I can figure out how to get up, get on my feet and get motivated and do some things, like, then I can donate money, make enough money to donate money to people who are dealing with brain cancer. I can donate to cancer research, or I can pay for a hotel for somebody that's hurting. If you're laying in bed flat on your back, where's your difference in the world? And that gets a lot of people really upset. But I believe that. And if you're one of those people that are listening today and you're like, don't talk about me like that, you know, I want you to hear me that like there is purpose and a calling on your life. There is something big out there for you. And if like maybe there's something big, or maybe there's just one person watching you that's just like watching you live and do your thing, and they're going to face the same thing pretty soon, and they're going to look to you as an example.
Yeah.
What example are you setting?
Yeah. I think if I were to kind of encapsulate like a lot of the energy of what you spoke to is kind of that, like we are all, whether it's cancer, whether it's some other hardship or trauma or whatever, like we all are, everybody's going to face something in our life. Like we're going to have something. And it's that choice of whether or not we stay the victim of the thing that hit us or whether or not we honor it and recognize it. If we can get to that place of like really thanking it for being there, part of our life. And then look, like you said, like looking for how is this? And like what I did, I remember it was like, this is a part of my story. Like this is a part of who I am and the impact that I know I'm going to meant to have in the world. And I know, I mean, I feel like sometimes I talk a lot about my husband's story and stuff, but for me, it was like, that was the moment that I realized, like, how do I live life right now instead of just waiting for life to happen when some magical moment happens, like when when life got easier. Cause like that was like in the thick of like raising little kids and it was tough and it was hard. And so you're in that season looking at, man, when life gets easier, when things get easier, when the days get easier, or when we make more money or whatever. And it was, for me, that was the wake up call of recognizing, how do I make sure that I'm living today how I want to be living today? And so for me, that's a big part of my message. That's a big part of my story. And like helping women build a business, it's not just about like, can we make all the sacrifices right now for the one day, someday when we maybe have this business that gives us all of the freedom that we want, but it's like, how do we have the freedom now at the same time of growing? And I think that that's like what you were kind of speaking to is kind of that energy of like, how do we experience all of the facets of life, right? The pain, the grief, all of those things. And yet at the same time, know that we're not a victim to it. So it's like, we get to honor those things. We get to honor the people. We get to honor the tragedies. We get to honor all of those experiences that we have in our life, but know that they don't dictate who we are and what we're capable of and what we're meant to be and what we're meant to do. And if we can live that, our life in that way, like what magic, what beauty could we bring to the world rather than just feeling like, man, these things all happened to me. Why me? Why this sucks?
Yeah. Yeah. Like people I like the saying that victimhood is not a virtue. Like if you're stuck in victimhood, like get out, do whatever it takes. Like we're all victims of something. We're all going to be victims of something. But I think that we just have it in our hand. Like, what are we doing with it? Are we going to just hold on to it? Like, I was a victim and this thing happened to me. And like, this is going to define the rest of my life. Or are we going to be like, can I see this as, I hesitate to say gift because that seems like such a positive thing, but it's like, can I take this experience and turn it into something really beautiful? And I think that's, like I said, I think that's the best way that we can honor people that we've lost. But we were talking about like grief, but like people think grief is death, and it is, but it's also divorce. It's also disasters. Like if your house burns or there's this, big event that's really terrible that happens, it's also trauma. And it's, things like losing your sense of safety and your sense of security. And it could be losing your job, losing your financial, like there's all these big things that we can compile and say, these things are things that you will grieve. Right. And so like, if you're listening today and you're like, I haven't lost anybody, like you've had grief, like we all have, you're going to have it. And when we say like, oh, well, here's another one, pets dying. I recently talked to somebody and I was like, how are you doing? She was like, my dog died and I can't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And she was like, and I'm telling this to you and your husband died. And like, why am I even telling you this? And I'm like, well, I was like, dogs are a big part of our favor. Like grief is experienced at 100%. So if it was your goldfish and you're really feeling it, like it's real. Okay. Like we can't like validate like, oh, well, my husband died, so your dog dying doesn't mean anything. Like we need to validate those things because it helps us to move forward.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. I know you just said, you said at the beginning, like how I know a little change of topic, but like as you introduced yourself, like your last name.
Yeah.
I would love to know like that journey for you in going from like this place of like the grief and honoring your husband and the life that you dreamt together and like all of those things to moving forward and like stepping into being able to open to love again and like that story? Like what did that process and story look like for you?
Well, that was okay. So I met him 7 months after my husband died, which is really soon by pretty much everybody's standard. Everybody says wait a year. Like you got to wait a year. Like the year is the standard. But I think just like how we don't judge other people's grief, you always also can't judge other people's timelines.
Yeah.
And I think even more than that, like you can't judge God's timeline for things. I physically lost my husband 7 months before I met Bo, but I lost my husband when he got diagnosed. He was basically like he had dementia and he was sedated like from the medication because he did not handle medication well. And so like there was no real like not much of a relationship with him the whole time he was sick because he was so medicated and so sick. And so like while it looked like it was 7 months, like it felt like a year and 7 months.
Yeah.
But when I met him, like I knew pretty well the moment I saw him that I was going to marry him. It was a very, if it would have happened a couple years later, it would have been the most exciting moment of my life. But it wasn't. It was 7 months after he had passed. And I knew the reaction that was going to come from everybody. Like some people even thought that we were together before my husband died. Even knowing my character thought that was a thing, which is wild because like, I don't know anybody who's ever taken care of their partners or dying. The last thing you're thinking about is starting a relationship. Like I never wanted to get married again after my first husband passed away. Like I was like, I will never put myself in a position to have to do this again. And that being loving and losing. I will not put myself in that situation again. So meeting him, I saw him and avoided him, and then had to be in a situation where I was with him again a few days later, and I couldn't eat. It was sickening to me. It felt so like it felt wrong. So it felt like betrayal because I didn't choose for my marriage to end. Okay. Yeah. So where you have divorce or breakup, this feels very final. Like there's this moment of like, it's over. I didn't feel that with my first husband. Like we have our kids and we have like, it's like this life is the same. He's just not here anymore. And then bringing somebody else in. Like I met my husband when I was 17. Like he was the only real serious relationship I had ever had. And so it felt very wrong. It felt very wrong. It was like, okay, this is bad. This is really bad. And so for like 5 days, I was like just sick because I knew I was going to marry him. Like it was like he could have had a sign and it would have not been more obvious.
It's like neon sign flying above him all the way around.
I'm your husband. Yeah. But it felt to me, so you have to be a very unique person to marry a widow and do it correctly and to do it well. He did know my husband not well, but he had a lot of respect for him and knew he was a great man. But for a guy to come in and be like, okay, I realize that you're still going to grieve this other man, and I'm strong enough and confident enough to watch you cry over another man. Like, what even is that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know any other men like him. Like, I don't even know them. Like, I'm not saying like I haven't dated them. I don't even know any other guys like that are like, and he's like, well, of course you're sad. You didn't choose to leave him. He didn't choose to leave you. Like, it makes total sense. And like, I was very open from the beginning that like, I'm going to be sad. Things are going to be hard. And he's like, of course they are. Like he like didn't have any like objection or question about it. It was just obviously you're going to be sad. And he has just come along beside me and been so loving and so nurturing. It felt like to me, like I went through infertility and that was really hard. And then went through the diagnosis, which was horrific, and then the death. And it was almost like, it felt to me like, I don't know if God works like this, so don't like quote me. But it almost felt like God was like, here's Bo. Like you've went through some really hard stuff. Have something that's really easy, easy to talk to, easy to get along with, easy to love. Like he's going to make your life better. Like he's going to like just enrich your life in so many ways. And like, it was just like such a gift, but then at the same time worried sick about what everybody was going to think.
Yeah.
because it was too soon in everybody's book. And that's what I said. Like, everybody who's not been in that situation is like judgy about it. People who have been in that situation are like, where did you find him? Like, how did you find him?
How did you have that neon sign?
Yeah, like how did this just happen? People want like advice on how to find somebody, and I'm like, I don't have anything to say about that. But yeah, and the other side is like people who are widowed will secretly reach out to me and be like, I met somebody.
Yeah.
And it's within the year. There's always somebody who falls in love with somebody or has somebody approach them within that year. And they're just so worried about what everybody's going to think.
Yeah.
And I can just tell you, people are going to be ticked.
Yeah.
Like, I've experienced that. You may even lose some relationships over it.
Yeah.
But my gosh, to have a best friend and somebody who loves you and understands you and like you can relate, because it seems like you have a great relationship with your husband, but it is the relationship that's above all of the relationships. Like, who else are you laying down with at night and getting up with in the morning and doing finances and hard and easy and fun with? Your husband. So like at the end of the day, if you have that opportunity for just like this, like what feels like a once in a lifetime love,
Yeah.
who cares how long it's been? But it was wonderful. It was, aside from that, if I wouldn't have been worried about what everybody thought, it would have just been this over the moon experience. And my kids, a lot of people want to know about my kids.
Yeah.
Because they're like, what do they think? I was already talking to him for a couple weeks. No, it was before then. And the kids were like, my son was like, like, we'd like for you, like, we want to have a dad. Like, we want to have a dad again. And I was like, well, that means that I'm going to have to date, which will be very awkward for you guys. And they're like, yeah, we know, but like also understand that like that's the only way we're going to get a dad again is if you date. And I was like, so you guys are cool with it. And this was 6 months after, I think 6 months after he'd passed. And I was like, okay. And they kind of had some requirements like of what they wanted.
They're like shopping for a new dad.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And
how old are your kids, or were they?
At the time, let's see, they were 12 and 6.
Okay.
6, 7-ish in that area. And my daughter like was just like, I want him to have big muscles. And I'm like, wow, you're so vain. And my son had his requirements. Like he wanted him to like sports and he wanted him to, he said he always wanted a brother. And so he was like, if he had kids, that would be kind of cool. And so Bo checked a lot of the boxes. And he has a son that's the exact same age as my son. So kind of got his brother.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful experience, but really hard too.
Yeah.
Really hard it wasn't hard to accept the love again. It was just hard because I know it's been hard for his family. It's been hard for my family seeing me with somebody else and where somebody that they loved used to stand. I know that that's really hard. And it was hard for me too, but I think when it comes to that, most people are just really concerned about how they feel and they don't really recognize how hard it was for the person that they're judging.
Totally. Everybody's going through their own grief, like in their own process. Yeah. Like imagine for your first husband's family, like they're grieving the loss of their son. And that's a different, that's a different grief. It's a different journey. It's a different story. And each of us are on our own grief journey stories. And just the same as I think for you, like you can't judge how they're grieving. They can't judge how you're grieving.
Right.
Like we're all grieving it in different ways. And like even like what you said in the beginning of like two siblings growing up in the same house could have had a vastly different experience. And so we can't understand what other people are going through or what other people are experiencing or you can only project your own, like, this is how I think it should be, or this is how I think I would go through it, or this is, if I were in that situation, I couldn't do that, but we don't know, like, we don't know, like you said, divine timing. We don't know everybody else's stories. And so I think the best thing we can do for ourselves and for other people is just like hold grace for everybody's own journey and own space as they navigate whatever it might be in their life, and allowing that.
Yeah. I mean, like how much better would the world be if we saw somebody like perceivingly, like really screwing up and we were just like, you know what? I love that person. And I'm trusting that as long as they're not hurting themselves or somebody else, that I'm going to love them and support them in where they're at in their journey. Like how much better would the world be? Totally. But we think we know what's best for everybody and get mad when they don't behave the way we want them to. Like what a prison.
Yeah.
Can we stop doing that?
Yeah. Well, even
Please.
I was going to say, even like for my husband and like my kids, I have learned that one of the biggest areas of conflict is unmet expectations.
Yeah.
So it's like the expectations that I hold of them that they're going to do certain things, even as simple and stupid as like take out the trash.
Yeah.
He didn't take out the trash. I didn't even ask him to. It was
Right.
this like unmet expectation. And so I think sometimes when we look at like where we find that resistance with other people, it's oftentimes an expectation that we had of them that either we didn't recognize that we even had that expectation of them, or two, we never even expressed that expectation
Right.
of that to them. And yet that causes so much conflict, like around the world, right? Like there's expectations that we have of other people that they're going to believe the same things as we do and they're going to behave in the same ways that we would, and like all of these things. Like I really think it's, if we looked at it in a deeper layer, like how we can become more aware of like the expectations that we're holding of ourselves and the expectations we're holding of other people, and where are we being honest and communicating any of that,
Right.
like would be so it would be life-changing, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's one of the
Yeah.
most beautiful, loveliest things about having a second marriage
Mm-hmm.
is that you already knew what really sabotaged things the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
So me and Bo, it's just like what is the expectation? Because if you tell me the expectation, I can meet it.
Yeah.
Like your husband can take the trash out if he just
Yeah.
knew, and he probably would because like he doesn't want to make you mad.
Yeah.
Like
He's like,
and
I would be happy. Just tell me what you
right,
needed.
just don't like make this
Yes.
mysterious expectation. But that's one thing that going in is like, okay, here's some expectations. We are not going to fight. That's not going to happen. We can discuss, we can get deep into conversations. We're not fighting. Expectations around like dinner and how we do different things around the house. Like as long as we know and you like love somebody, like it just makes it easier to know those expectations and to also have very few of them.
Yeah.
Don't be like, here's the list. Here's my PowerPoint on the
Totally.
expectations that I have for the people in my life, because it's when people don't meet expectations that we get hurt
Yes.
and get mad. Like, for
Yeah.
example, it's an expectation that my son does the dishes. I'm very angry when I open up the cabinets and he's put dirty dishes in there, right? So it's like the expectations can be good and bad, but having as few as possible, I think, is really a good idea, especially when it comes to people outside your home.
Mm-hmm. So good. Oh, JoBeth, this was so good. And I enjoyed being able to chat with you. And I say this at the end, I'm like, I think we could just keep going. Like we could probably,
Oh, for sure. We could talk for days.
which probably also like goes to show like we are just like sitting on a back porch on a swing, like hanging out, drinking our cup of coffee or whatever it is. But for those people that want to kind of connect with you further and learn more about what you're doing and how you're supporting people in the world and things like that, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and it's all NWA Grief Specialist. And so you can find me there. And on Facebook, it will be JoBeth Polly. It could be JoBeth Evans, depending on when this airs and when they see it in the process of changing all that. But I would love to hear from anybody, if you have questions about grief or where you're at. Like I do free calls with people to just hear your heart and see what's a good plan for you. Because I think that you need a plan. We all need a plan. Like you need a roadmap of how to move forward. And maybe that's you work with me. Maybe that's you go find a therapist and I, kind of guide you on how to select a good therapist. I don't know what it is, but if you're just like, I need somebody, I need something, just reach out to me and on Facebook or through my email. I would love to just be a stepping stone for you to get to where you want to be. So just feel free to reach out.
Thanks so much for coming on. This was amazing.
Thank you.